I just turned 40 and it feels like something shifted. Not in a crisis way, more of like a clarity way. I spent some time, I looked back on 2 decades of my career building, failing, leading, starting over, and I realized momentum isn't something you catch, it's something you build, piece by piece. This video is a time capsule. For me, for anyone who feels like they're in the middle of your career, the middle of your story, the middle of your identity. I want to show you the truth behind growth, what momentum really looks like when no one's watching. It's not flashy, it's not easy, but it's possible. So let's talk about the spark, the struggle, what it means to still be moving forward. Whether you're 20 or 40, this story has something for you. Chapter 1, the spark. So ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be, of course, a Major League Baseball player. And once I realized that I wasn't good enough to be a Major League Baseball player, I wanted to be the general manager of the Minnesota Twins, right? Make the trade, sign the players, draft the people, like build the architect of the Minnesota Twins. So when I was in college, what I realized I needed to do was work with a 4 baseball team. The summer after my first year of college, that freshman year, I applied for a really competitive internship with the Sioux Falls Canaries here in Sioux Falls where I live today. And let me just tell you, what I thought that internship would be versus what it was very different. I was an unpaid intern. I'd come to all of the home games, and I did everything from wearing a chicken costume to a banana suit to handing out salted nut rolls. Whatever they needed to do, I would do it. We had one promotion where you had to run the bases. I started on first base, and a fan would start at home. And if the fan caught the chicken, everybody in the stadium would get half-priced wings at Buffalo Wild Wings. Well, I was pretty fast, and starting at first base for someone at home, no one would catch me until my boss every once in a while would say, give him the wings. And so then I had to run around with my head cut off, like a chicken with his head cut off, and get tackled. One time I got tackled by this 300-pound man, and I swear I might have been concussed. The lesson I learned from that internship with the Canaries is that stay humble, do the grunt work, try different things. Everyone starts at the bottom, and when you start at the bottom, you learn what it takes, and you can only go up. The second lesson I learned from my baseball internship, passion doesn't have to be your job. You maybe don't want to mix your hobbies and your work. I started that summer thinking I'm going to have a career in baseball. My passion is going to be my career. And by the end of that summer, I actually realized I don't know if I want to take my future family to the ballpark, to my job, to work every single day. Maybe I should separate my hobbies and my work. Maybe I can do good work over here and help people and then enjoy baseball as a passion or a hobby. So be careful, yes, follow your passion, but you don't have to mix work and pleasure all the time. That next summer, I worked at an ice cream shop in South Dakota, in Brookings, South Dakota, called Zesto. A few lessons that I learned from Zesto. Details matter. For being this little mom and pop ice cream shop, I was shocked when I learned during my training how much process and details go into running an ice cream shop. When I first took the job, we'd have to make ice cream cones and measure out the weight of a small, medium, and large. I remember my boss saying, once you learn how to make an ice cream cone, it's kind of like riding a bike. You'll never forget. And so I would make it, measure it, the weight, put it back in the bucket, and do it over and over again until I could make a small, a medium, and a large consistently. Each scoop of candy, whether you're having an avalanche or a sundae or whatever it might be, was measured out and detailed. So details really matter. This is true in a big corporation and a small ice cream shop. And I really learned to appreciate the dedication and the precise detail, the work that goes into any type of business. The other thing I think is important is that everyone should work a service job to serve a customer, someone who's coming in using their hard-earned money to have an ice cream sundae, right? You're gonna get happy customers that you truly make their day. You're gonna get unhappy customers that no matter what, they're gonna be pissed off. And that's just working a service job. Service jobs translate. It's why the best CEOs and leaders understand that getting to the front line, getting in front of their customers, being in that customer support job for a day, getting out in front to talk to the customers is the key for any leader. And the good organizations put everybody through that service experience. So I think everybody should work a service job. I want to tell a story of the first true internship I had that led to, my now career. So I was a junior in college at Luther College, and I took a entrepreneurship class. The best part of this entrepreneurship class, I don't remember even what I learned in the textbook, But the teacher would bring in entrepreneurs from the community, from the surrounding area in Decorah, Iowa. And I remember vividly the spring of 2007. This guy came in named Jason Trout, and Jason was a solopreneur. He had his own business. At that time, in 2007, he was doing Google Ads. As he spoke and talked about what it was like to be an entrepreneur, it felt like the world had just opened up to my eyes. I didn't really know what entrepreneurship was. My dad was a small business owner, but I just hadn't even considered this idea of just working from your laptop, which today seems so obvious, but in 2007, was so new to me. And when the school bell rang and everybody, of course, got up and left the classroom, I decided to stick around. And I walked up to Jason and I said, "Hey, have you ever considered taking an intern?" And Jason said, "Meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop." I did what 20-year-old John knew how to do. I put on my suit the next morning and I had my pad folio, if you remember what those are. I printed out multiple copies of my resume, showed up at the coffee shop to meet with Jason because I was, ready to interview and try to get this internship. And the first thing Jason said is, "Well, I set up your email address, watch this YouTube video, read this article, and then we're gonna get started. And you're gonna learn how to do Google Ads." And that moment changed my life, right? Just by asking, Jason gave me the chance. And I remember saying, "Don't you need to interview me to ask if I'm qualified?" And he said, "No, you asked." And so the lesson is that closed mouths don't get fed. If you want something, you gotta ask for it. Raise your hand, go up and ask for that internship. See if you're qualified for something. Ask for something, maybe even if you're unqualified. But you don't know if you don't ask. This applies for sales. This applies for opportunities. This applies to meeting your future husband or wife, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. I always think it's really important to teach people to thank your mentors. There are so many people behind the successful people that we see every day. You see a CEO, you see a rock star, you see a politician, even, a local business owner, whatever it might be. There's so many people behind them that made them successful. And I'm not just talking about their family, of course, their mom and dad, their grandparents, their siblings, but the accountant, the lawyer, the first boss, that one person who gave a piece of advice, right? And so I think it's so important to thank your mentors. I'm so grateful that I saw Jason Trout at a later event once I had become an entrepreneur and had become successful. And I got to thank him for taking a chance on me. And I got to thank him for giving me an opportunity and exposing me to this whole new world. I'm especially thankful because Jason's not here today anymore. And I'm just really glad that I thanked him then. So I don't regret not having a chance to do that. So thank your mentors and do it often. So I graduated from college and I had these two paths divided. Jason had said, "Do you want to come and join my business and be an employee of my company? You could work wherever you want." Or I had this job offer through a corporate consulting gig, a company called Accenture. And so during my senior year, I had to do multiple rounds of interviews. They came to campus with we had a booth, like a career fair, right? And you meet them. Then I had an interview, a phone interview. Then they came to campus. Then I had to go to Minneapolis for a third round interview. Anyway, I get this corporate job and I get an offer by the fall of my senior year. And I'm thinking, this is kind of the game, right? You go to college, you get a job. It's a good offer. It's going to $50,000. I was 22 years old. I was going to move to Minneapolis so I could be close to the Minnesota Twins. But I remember just feeling this pull. I really wanted to know what it was like to go work with Jason, to be an entrepreneur. Now, deep down inside, I just got pulled too strongly to go do the practical path and sort of, thank or reward my parents for all their help. So I took that corporate job, moved to Minneapolis, and then I started this job as a corporate analyst, right? And I can tell you, I'm so grateful for that experience. The TLDR there is that I only made it as a consultant for 11 months. I remember calling my dad about 3 months in and said, "Dad, I don't think this is for me. I don't think I'm cut out for this job. I feel like if I don't show up for work tomorrow, no one would even notice." And he said, "Stick it out for a year, John." The most dad thing you can say, just stick it out for a year. Well, I made it 11 months and then I quit. But I'm so grateful for those 11 months. And the lesson there is to get uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable from the get. Putting on a suit and tie, learning corporate language like synergy and bandwidth, and going to corporate training. They flew new analysts from all over the world to St. Charles, Illinois, where we all got together on this campus and learned consulting things together. Very quickly, I learned what I didn't want, but I'm so glad that I got uncomfortable and stretched myself. And that lesson of being uncomfortable applies to so many aspects of life. Because the other thing that first job taught me is to know what you don't want. See, exposure really brings clarity, right? When you experience things, then you know them better. We often think about like, well, what is the ideal path for me? Or what's my passion? What does my life look like? You don't know until you experience it. There's this concept called the speed runner's mindset. It's a video game concept. The idea is not just to beat the game on the video game, but to beat it as fast as possible. The way I apply a speed runner mindset in life is how can I experience things as quickly as possible, right? Run through the level so I know what I like, what I want to go back to and experience more, what maybe I need to work on. And so some people would say, well, John, shouldn't you stop to smell the roses, like enjoy life? And I would say, yes, but you don't even know where the roses are, right? There are roses you've never seen. There are gardens you've never experienced. And so when experiencing things, get to know them, get exposed, and run through those experiences as fast as possible, and then you can go back. Chapter 2, building. So after I decided to put in my resignation in my corporate job and tell my dad we're going to quit, my older brother and I saw a little pamphlet up at the campus at South Dakota State University from an organization called the Enterprise Institute. And they were advertising a grant through the state of South Dakota, an economic development grant, $15,000. And the two rules were you had to build a business in South Dakota, and that business had to somehow use technology. My brother was living in Norway. I was living in Minneapolis. He was home, and over the weekend, we whiteboarded out this idea to build a business. I remember doing the Skype call, me in Minneapolis, Scott in Norway, and the people out in Pierre, South Dakota. And we interviewed and got the grant. We thought we had like pulled one over that they decided to give us $15,000 for this crazy little whiteboard idea. And we both moved home to South Dakota in June of 2009 and start a business. And that business became nineclouds. It was my first journey or foray into entrepreneurship. And what I'm really proud of is that company still exists today. I don't work there, but that company still does amazing work and is thriving today. And the first thing that I learned, our idea was to help South Dakota companies learn technology. Essentially to bring them online. It was the advent of Web 2.0, right? You didn't just have a website now, but you had social media, you had content, blogs, YouTube videos, right? And we were telling people, your customers are looking for you, but are they finding you? Are they finding what they're looking for online? What I learned from that experience is authenticity sells. We didn't know what we didn't know. We weren't really great entrepreneurs, but we truly cared about solving this problem. We truly wanted to help South Dakota business owners, entrepreneurs, and just people get online. We would go to church basements and teach. We would go to Rotary clubs, to Lions Club, to Chamber of Commerce. Anyone who would listen to us, we'd come and share the good news about this new technology. But the one thing we did really well in those early days at nineclouds was we built a brand. And I don't think I realized in hindsight how important that was. We worked with one of my favorite designers ever, Kyle Muchelnaus, a local South Dakota designer. He made these amazing nineclouds cards. We painted our office blue and had these little white clouds. We started a podcast in 2010 called Cloud Control, where we'd go through different technology. And I still wish we kept going down that podcast. 2010 was like early days podcast. And so we did it because it was fun to build a brand. But I later have learned, and of course was reinforced in my next company, how important building a brand can be. This applies for companies, for corporations, for entrepreneurs, for startups, and of course for people, a personal brand as well. Now, the thing I do regret or wish I would have done better is to document the journey. Why do I create content? Well, one, I love to create content. I love to teach. I love to share what I know, but I also love to reflect. That's why I'm making this video, to document the journey. I vividly remember being down the street here on Phillips Avenue at our first apartment. Scott and I waking up, having a bowl of cereal and being on our laptops and just trying to grind and trying to build a company. It was our Google in the garage type of moment. And I don't have that picture. It's boiled into my brain, but I wish I could share it in this video, right? And that's why I always say document, don't create, right? Capture the journey while you're on the journey. The journey really is the story. The content is what you share. And that's how you build fans, and that's how you build an audience. You bring people along. It's cool to celebrate the people who are winning, but it's amazing to watch the people as they're winning and as they're growing. A really important thing happened in early days nineclouds that truly just probably changed the trajectory of my life, which was when I met my future co-founder, Amy Colgan. So the story there is we went to SDSU and asked the professor, Scott and I, we needed to hire our first employee. The truth is we were in Sioux Falls. We had clients using Facebook up in Brookings, where SDSU was. And often back then in those Facebook days, it was like, we need to post a picture, a local bar, restaurant. We need to post a picture of our drink of the week. $1 off margarita, $1 off Bloody Mary. And it's hard to believe this, but they didn't know how to do that. And so my brother and I would drive an hour to Brookings, take a picture on our little, it wasn't even an iPhone then, probably our, Razor, take a picture, upload it to Facebook, say $1 off margaritas, like come on downtown. And then we'd stop at my parents for dinner and drive back home to Sioux Falls. Turns out not a great business model, not valuing your time very well, not very scalable. So we went to SDSU and said, who are your best marketing advertising students? The professor gave us 3 names. We interviewed them. One of them said, well, I'm also a double major in graphic design, and her name is Amy. And we hired her as our first employee at nineclouds. And the irony is, Amy eventually became my co-founder of Lemonly. And so the lesson here is to find your counterbalance, right? One of the struggles, or maybe things that took nineclouds longer, or the reason why it was slower to grow, is Scott and I were brothers. We have similar strengths. And we overlapped. The Venn diagram of what we were good at was tighter. But when I found Amy, she really was my counterbalance, what my strengths are her weaknesses and vice versa. And it just clicked. And so hiring Amy at nineclouds as our first employee definitely changed the trajectory of my life. Chapter 3, growth. So this is where things start to get interesting. And this is the story of Lemonly. Lemonly was started in 2011 a little bit accidentally, right? nineclouds was doing anything that you would pay us to do as long as it was legal. Like on digital, we did focus groups, we'd build websites, we would create videos, we'd set up your Twitter account, whatever it was. But the problem is when you're not known for anything, people don't reach out to you, right? You don't get referred, people don't know who you are. It was like, oh, nineclouds, those social media brothers, what do they do, right? And we weren't known for anything. And so the lesson here with Lemonly, the kernel of that idea was, could we be the best in the world at one thing? Let's be great at one thing, be best in the world. And so we were making a few infographics for our clients. This is in 2011. We saw the analytics that those were performing best. People wanted that content. And we said, let's just do that one thing. But quickly, the traction started happening. Our name got referred. People reached out. Marriott called and said, we want to make infographics, right? And I always joke that when you're small, you try to act big. We had all these people. My younger brother was on our website. Our old intern was still on our website. We tried to look bigger, even though it was just like the two of us. And then, of course, big companies try to look small. So small companies try to be big, big, small. But we became best in the world at one thing, and you could tell you had traction. People always ask, Lemonly, hey, you worked with Netflix and Marriott, Major League Baseball, Google, the Green Bay Packers. How did you do that? It's a great question. And the truth is that timing is luck. When you time something can be very lucky. Now I believe you can create your own luck. So we noticed that this type of content was performing. We noticed that there were a lot of infographics on the internet, and a lot of them weren't that good. We noticed that attention spans are shorter than ever and continuing to go down. People are visual creatures, right? So it was sort of all these combining trends stacked on top of each other. But in many ways, the timing was lucky. Today, if you search infographic company, infographic design agency, Lemonly's the #1 result. And so our growth model and SEO and search was due to timing. Now, when you start hiring employees and growing the team, one of the things when it comes to thinking about culture is you really have to set the standard. You really have to decide, what do you want to be known for? And that's core values, and that's how you onboard and how you train, and there's so many things to unpack that. But one story that stands out to me is, Amy is a workhorse, right? So Amy loves to work just like I love to work. I would sell the infographics, I would manage them, she would create them. We'd go on to the next one, sometimes multiple at the same time. And it was clear pretty quickly we needed to hire, we needed to grow. And that's where we hired our first employee, Ashton. And I remember having a conversation with Ashton when I had onboarded her and said, hey, I know that Amy doesn't always take lunch, and I know that Amy works very long days. That is not what you have to do. That is not the expectation. You can have lunch. And so I remember, I was a little bit self-conscious about what other people would think, joining this team of 2 people that were grinding and working so hard. And of course, Ashton delivered and also worked super hard and still works there today. But I realized how important it was to set the standard, right? Every person that came in knew what Amy and I expected of them, but also what we expected of ourselves, because we showed up and were accountable for that standard. And so get the standard right, get the values right, and everything else will happen in the culture. People want to whiteboard and strategy session company culture, and you just have to care. At the end of the day, when I reflect on my Lemonly experience, what was the most important thing is I think we just cared more than everyone else, right? As a leader, I cared about the people so much. I genuinely cared about our clients and making them, seeing that they had success and that they'd have wins. I cared about every project that went out the door, that it would be up to our standard and look awesome and be really great. I cared about the reputation of Lemonly, how people would talk about us, how people would think about refer us to us. And I just think caring, it sounds oversimplified, but usually the simple things are the right things. Just caring a lot. Just caring so much can go a long way. If you're willing to work and you care more than others, you can win. Okay, this is my most important lesson as a CEO. I still coach this to my CEOs all the time. You build the people and the people build the business, right? I think that's where CEOs and founders sometimes go sideways, is they try to be the best at everything. They hold on, they think they are the special sauce. And truly, it's like if you build the best team wins, right? Look at sports, right? You can have the best player in the league. The best team often wins the championship. The best stars, the superstars, are the ones that make the people around them better, right? And so I always think about, like, it was my job to invest in these people, care about these people, and help them grow and get better. And if they do that, they will build the company and Lemonly will win. I think a lot about what I call like the coaching tree. So in sports, you'll see a football coach will have their tree, and their coaching tree is the people that go on to coach at other places, and the coordinators, and the people that underneath them. And you see these roots, this like tree analogy of all the people that stem from this one great leader or coach. And I think about that a lot at Lemonly. I'm so proud of the people that are still at Lemonly, and I'm also super proud of all the alumni, right? We've had Lemonly employees go work at Facebook and Microsoft, and IBM and Lush and all these different companies, but we've also had countless entrepreneurs. There are so many entrepreneurs who have come from early days Lemonly, and I'm so proud of that, right? They saw us build a company. We let them in on the inside. They knew the numbers, they knew the operations, they knew the power of owning your own thing, and they wanted to do it themselves. And so I love cheering those people on and just seeing the impact, sort of the branches of this one business. So your job as CEO is build the people, and the people will build the company. Chapter 4, starting over. I can't remember where I first heard this idea. Maybe it was a comedian or something, but the idea is make sure you leave too early instead of too late. Leave them wanting more. And so I could go on a whole nother video about why we sold Lemonly and how the deal went down and why we chose that, but that's not for this story. The important part was I knew I had another chapter to write, and I wasn't always gonna be the Lemonly guy. And I also knew that like someone else could take this thing further. Like I had taken Lemonly where I could take it, and it has a future in someone else's hands. And so I always think, leave too early instead of staying too long. You kind of wear out your welcome, and people are like ready for something new. Go before that, because then they'll kind of miss you. So I leave Lemonly, and in 2022 we had 1 year kind of transition after the transaction. And I always told my wife Paige, I said, if I ever sell Lemonly, give me 6 months to just do nothing, right? I'm just going to be in the kindergarten pickup line every day for Margot, which I was. I'm going to get super ripped and fit, and I'm just going to enjoy free time. And I guess maybe, some people say entrepreneurship is a disease. Maybe they're right, because instead of 6 months break, 6 weeks later, I started another company. And I was deep in this world of NFTs. Crypto was exploding. I have this wild story where I bought a picture, a JPEG of a rock, like a pet rock, a 2D rock. And 6 weeks later, I sold it for $1 million. Like, it was just a crazy time in this NFT world. And in many ways, I was sort of chasing money, right? I was doing it for the wrong reasons. But my lesson here is don't skip the rest. The rest is where you learn. The break, kind of before you're ready to go up the second mountain, you have to reflect on and kind of digest the first. And I just didn't do that. I think I did that over time now, but I didn't do that in the moment. And I just was running on to the next thing without a lot of reason why or know-how, just chasing money in many ways. Because what happened with that business, market conditions changed, sort of the eyeballs and attention left the room, the oxygen left the room, and 6 months later, the business didn't even exist. And so the lesson there I still teach is you gotta be a painkiller and not a vitamin, right? Are you solving a problem? My timing was probably off. My value proposition was a cool thing, like a nice to have. It would be cool if, but you didn't need it. Companies, small, medium-sized businesses didn't need an NFT in 2022, and guess what? They don't in 2025 either. In my instance earlier about Lemonly, timing can be lucky. You can also be too early, right? And I think a lot about what I kind of describe as product founder fit. You hear about product market fit, like is the idea fit the market in the right time, the right place? Do people want it? But product founder fit matters too, meaning my skill sets as a leader, as a storyteller, a communicator, someone who activates, who galvanizes. That's not the phase that crypto and blockchain is in, especially then. It's in the building phase. Are you a builder? Are you gonna get in the trenches? Are you gonna tinker and iterate and change? And so I think of like that game is in the first or second inning. Like my skills were for later, and it just wasn't a right time, right place. Chapter 5, the now. In the span of 6 months, I had left Lemonly, started a business, and then already shut it down, that business. So I really was sitting there thinking, what do I do next, right? And I've said this on video before, but 2022 was one of the hardest years of my life because my identity was so deeply tied to Lemonly that I didn't know what to do without it, even though it was my decision. And I got a check to leave my job. I got a check to be done working, not forever, but for that time. And yet I didn't know what to do next. And so I felt really lost, but no one wants to hear the guy who sold his company complain about that, right? So I felt like I didn't know who to talk to. And I'm so grateful that summer, about August, a friend of mine who also runs a creative agency, she reached out and said, have you ever considered being a coach? And the answer was no. I hadn't considered being a coach. I had my own CEO coach before. I knew the power of having a coach. I believed in it, but I hadn't considered doing it myself. And so I always think, let the market pull you. The market will pull you forward if you listen. If you listen to people's pains, not the vitamins, and you kind of think about your product, founder fit, and know what you're good at and your strengths, the market will pull you if you're listening. And so all of a sudden, by the end of 2022, I started tinkering with coaching. Didn't give it a name, didn't launch a company, but I was just helping people, the person I used to be, like the CEO of a 20-person team, the founder of a creative agency, and off to the races we went. So then how do you find out what that thing is? How do you align product founder fit? How do you know your strengths? I always love the question of what looks like work to everyone else, but not to you, right? When you're doing the thing, it doesn't feel like work. You don't care if it's Monday or if it's Sunday, if it's 8 a.m. or if it's 5 p.m. Like when you're in it, you're in that flow state, and other people like, John's really working hard, and you're thinking, nah, that was just fun, right? Like I love doing that. That got me pumped up. And so I struggled with this at first, but when you're in your zone of genius, claim that identity, right? I am a coach. I'm a great coach. I can help people grow. At first, I was a little reluctant to say I'm a business coach. I'm an executive coach because, everyone's becoming a coach. There's Instagram life coaches, and you're giving knowledge, which the price of knowledge is increasingly going to zero. But what you're really giving is accountability, and cheerleading and a push. You're pushing people forward to become the best version of themselves. So I had to claim that identity of I'm a coach and I can help people. So around this time, I'm building this coaching business. And like most people, I started like one-on-one coaching, realized that doesn't scale, started doing some group coaching, created a lot of content to teach what I know, to put it out in the world, to give it away for free. And while I'm doing that, another friend, another mentor, Rick Melmer, reached out to me and he said, I'm retiring from this thing that I created, Leadership South Dakota. And I think you would be great at taking over the program. And I remember exactly where I was. We were having a beer and I thought, no, I'm an entrepreneur. Like I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a nonprofit guy. Like this is what I do. Rick really explained, I knew the organization, I'm an alumni of the program, but when we explained the opportunity and I realized I can do this and build this coaching business, and they honestly fit really well together. It'll help me practice, it'll help me get better, it'll help me build my network. And the lesson there was don't be afraid to make a left turn, right? Steve Jobs has this amazing quote, you can't connect the dots until you look back. And I feel like when I made this video and started putting down all the lessons I've learned, the dots started connecting, right? At 40 years old, I now know what I didn't at 25. But the beauty in that quote is that right now in the present, I'm connecting dots and I don't fully understand, right? When I do this video at 60, those dots will make sense. And so you can never connect the dots until you look back. So I was recruited by Rick. I made a left-hand turn. I became a nonprofit executive director. And I love this job because it gives me so much purpose, right? I'm really fueled by and the power of purpose. I also know what it's like to hand off your baby, right? To create this thing and to give it away to somebody else. Rick created it, and so I want to honor his legacy of what Rick and Val built and also make it better, right? Continue to iterate and make it better. And one of the ways we were able to make it better, and another great lesson is, get the band back together, right? Do that reunion tour. And for me, that was working again with Morgan Larson. She was like our second class of interns at Lemonly. I first met Morgan in 2012, and we've worked together on and off basically for 13 years. You know, it's like build the people, let the people build the team. When you know who you like to work with and who you connect with, that counterbalance, work with those people again, right? It's like writing a great song together. It just sounds right. And so work with who you know, who you trust, who has your back. It's such an honor to get to work with Morgan again in a different context and to grow. So when you think about the people that you've worked with in your life, the people that really get you, that challenge you, that call you out on your bullshit, will push you to be better and not just say yes, like that sounds great. Find those people and surround them with you. It's that classic quote of like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with, right? So make sure you're checking your 5 and making sure you're always upgrading and pushing those 5 to push you. So my last lesson, what I'm really excited about right now, in the now, is this idea of momentum. I really deeply believe that momentum can be made, that you can create your own momentum. It's not just something you try to find or get lucky or just it finds you or something that you just hope, sit around and waiting for it. I believe you can make momentum, and that making momentum is the most powerful force to move you from where you are today to where you want to be. If you're a content creator, the way you feel about your content can be a mirror to how you feel about your business. And I've felt at times a little bit of throwing spaghetti at the wall when it comes to content, trying new things, just seeing what sticks. And that can be good to a certain degree, but you have to eventually get real clear and specific. And so right now, my lesson here is to become obsessed. And I'm obsessed with this idea of momentum. It's this simple idea. I think simple scales. It's just one core idea that you can make momentum and you can change your life. And I'm trying to now sort of simplify the business, block out the noise, get clear on the content, like double down on this idea. And when you become obsessed with something, that becomes something that other people want to be a part of, right? They see it, they follow it, they want to know more about it, they want to join the wave, right? Get a part of that momentum. We'll see what this looks like a year from now if we do this video again, but I'm becoming obsessed with the idea of making momentum. So I made this video for anyone who feels like they're stuck in the middle. You're not at the beginning, you're not at the end, you're in it. The work, the waiting, the trying again and again. So if you see yourself in any piece of this story, know this: you can make your momentum. You actually likely have it right now, and you don't even realize it. Momentum is not always loud, it's not flashy, but it's there, and it's waiting for you to take the next step. So no more later, it's time for now, because forward isn't always a straight line. You can't connect those dots until you look backwards, but you can make a decision to show up, to trust the quiet process, to move forward, whether it's fast or slow, but to stay in it. So if you're still here watching, you're still trying, still choosing to move forward, then guess what? You're doing it. Keep going. You're closer than you think.